Welcome to the Walking Dread podcast, folks. Buckle up for a story that'll chill you to the bone. I'm Adrian, and with me tonight is Julia, our resident expert in all things spooky and creepy.
Hey everyone, ready for another eerie tale.
Tonight we're delving into the legend of the Wendigo and the hunter who dared to face this terrifying entity. The kind of story that makes you check your locks twice and maybe sleep with the lights on. But before we get into it, can you give us some background on the Wendigo? What exactly are we dealing with here?
The Wendigo is a creature straight out of Native American folklore, specifically the Algonquin tribes up in the Great Lakes region. It's usually depicted as this emaciated, almost skeletal figure with this insatiable hunger for human flesh.
Okay, so we're talking like a seriously creepy monster here. But you said usually depicted, so are there other interpretations of this thing?
Yeah, it's not just some mindless monster, It's often seen as like a representation of greed and consumption, the darkest parts of human nature. It's like the monster within us all kind of thing.
Okay, so it's not just about being scary, but it also has this deeper meaning tied to human behavior.
Yeah.
That adds a whole other layer of creepiness to it. So how does the Wendigo make its presence known in this story? What's going on in this town?
So the story starts in this small town, right? And everyone's on edge because hikers have been disappearing in the woods.
Classic horror movie setup.
Right. And of course, the townspeople are freaked out. Rumors start flying about what could be behind it all. Some blame wild animals. Others suspect something more sinister. But, there's always that one person.
It's the one who knows.
Exactly. In this case, it's the seasoned hunter named Tom. He's seen the creature's tracks, these misshapen footprints that are both human and monstrous, and he recognizes the signs. He knows it's a Wendigo.
That's a pretty terrifying image, those distorted tracks blurring the line between human and monster. It sounds like the townspeople are in denial, clinging to any explanation other than the supernatural. But Tom, with his experience in the woods, can't ignore the truth. What's his plan to deal with this creature?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Tom realizes that traditional hunting tactics won't work against a Wendigo. This isn't just some animal you can track and hunt down. It requires a deeper understanding, a knowledge of ancient rituals and forgotten ways. He decides to take a more ritualistic approach, something passed down through generations, to confront this evil.
Ritualistic. Okay, now we're talking about tapping into some serious ancient power. What does this ritual involve? What's Tom getting himself into?
The source material describes it as an ancient bargain, a sacrifice offered to appease the Wendigo and restore balance to the forest.
So it's like a give and take kind of deal.
Yeah, but it's not just about offering up like an animal or something simple. The Wendigo feeds on human greed and darkness, so the sacrifice has to be something personal from Tom, something that truly reflects the creature's nature.
Hold on, a personal sacrifice. That sounds intense. What exactly is Tom giving up? I'm getting a bad feeling about this.
It doesn't explicitly state what Tom sacrifices, but it heavily implies that it's something incredibly significant to him, something deeply personal. He's willing to pay a hefty price to protect his town, driven by this profound sense of duty and like a connection to his ancestors who face similar threats.
Wow, that's some serious dedication, putting himself on the line like that.
So how does he even find this Wendigo to perform the ritual? I mean, it's not like you can just set a trap for a creature born of human darkness.
Right, this isn't your typical hunt. The story suggests that Tom uses his own intuition and connection to the woods, almost like a sixth sense, to track the Wendigo's monstrous hunger. It's a spiritual pursuit, a battle fought on a level that transcends the physical world.
So it's more of a spiritual showdown, a clash of wills between Tom and this creature of darkness. This is getting pretty intense. What happens when they finally meet? It's less of a physical confrontation and more of a chilling negotiation, a bargain struck between man and monster in the heart of the wilderness. It says Tom uses ancient words like a chant passed down through generations to try and reason with the Wendigo to appease its hunger. But it's not a simple conversation. It's described as a struggle with Tom's voice strained and ragged as he utters these powerful words.
I can only imagine the kind of toll that would take facing a creature like that and drawing on such ancient power. What's the Wendigo's reaction to all of this? Does Tom manage to get through to it?
Well, the Wendigo, this creature of rage and hunger, it unleashes its fury, claws, teeth, the whole terrifying deal. It's this chaotic, violent scene that just showcases the raw power of this creature. But then silence. The Wendigo vanishes, banished back to the shadows from which it emerged.
So Tom actually banished it. It sounds like he won. That's pretty badass. But I have a feeling there's more to it than that. Victories like this usually come with a price, especially when dealing with ancient powers.
You're right, there are consequences. The story makes it clear that this wasn't a clean victory. The confrontation, the ancient words, the sheer power of the Wendigo, they all leave their mark on Tom. He returns to town not as a triumphant hero, but as a changed man. He's bearing the weight of his sacrifice, forever altered by his encounter with the monstrous.
Okay, now this is where things start to get really interesting. What kind of changes are we talking about? Is he injured? Traumatized? Or is it something even more unsettling?
The story's intentionally vague on the specifics, but it paints a chilling picture of Tom's transformation. He returns exhausted, drained, both physically and spiritually. The woods, his familiar hunting grounds, now feel different to him. Even his physical appearance has subtly changed. His hands are described as longer, his nails sharper, almost like something monstrous is creeping into his human form.
Oh, that's not good. It sounds like he's turning to the very thing he fought against. A classic horror movie trope. But it's even more terrifying when you consider the real-world implications.
Exactly, the lines between man and monster are starting to blur. Tom has stared into the abyss, and the abyss has stared back, leaving its mark on him. He's become something different, something other, a haunting echo of the creature he banished.
So he saved the town, but at a terrible cost. What happens next? How does he cope with this transformation? And what about the townspeople? Do they even realize what he's done for them?
Well, that's a story for part 2, but I'll leave you with this thought. How will they react when they see their hero has returned? Different.
Ooh, good cliffhanger. We'll be right back with part 2 to find out what happens next. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to the Walking Dread podcast. We left off with Tom, our brave hunter returning from his pretty harrowing encounter with the Wendigo, but not without some unsettling changes.
It seems that, banishing the beast came at a pretty steep price. He's showing all the signs of becoming the very thing he fought against.
But, what exactly is going on with Tom? Is he, going full Wendigo? Well, the source material doesn't explicitly say, but it paints a picture of a man grappling with this dark transformation. Remember, he offered a personal sacrifice to appease the Wendigo, and it seems to be taking its toll on him, both physically and psychologically, He's exhausted, his appearance has shifted, and even his perception of the woods, like his familiar hunting grounds, feels distorted.
So he's a stranger in his own home. It's like a chilling reflection of the monster he banished. So how does Tom handle this? Does he try to fight this transformation, or does he just kind of embrace it?
What's fascinating is that Tom doesn't run from his fate. He accepts this burden he's taken on the price he paid for the town's safety. He seems to understand that this transformation is a consequence of his actions, a part of that ancient bargain he made.
So instead of rejecting this monstrous side of himself, he leans into it. That's a pretty bold move. But what about the townspeople? How do they react to his return? Do they even realize what he's done for them?
That's the real tragedy here. The source describes the townspeople greeting Tom not with gratitude or relief, but with fear and suspicion. They see his transformation, the subtle but undeniable changes in his appearance and demeanor, and it's like they're reminded of the old stories, the terrifying legends of the Wendigo. Instead of a hero, they see a monster in the making.
Man, that's rough. He risks everything to save them from this horrifying creature, and they turn their backs on him. Seems pretty unfair.
It is, and it kind of speaks to this deeper fear, this primal instinct to recoil from the unknown, the monstrous. Tom's sacrifice has alienated him from the very people he sought to protect. He's become a symbol of the darkness they fear, a living reminder of the price paid for their safety.
It's almost like he's being punished for his bravery. So what does Tom do? Where does he go?
Tom doesn't lash out at their ignorance or try to force them to understand. He seems to accept his new reality, the isolation and the burden of his sacrifice. The source tells us that he chooses to live on the edge of town, a silent guardian against the forces of darkness, a lonely sentinel standing between the town and the wilderness.
That's both tragic and heroic. He's sacrificing his place in society, his connection to the community, to protect them from the things that go bump in the night. It's a powerful image of selflessness, even in the face of rejection.
It is, and it raises an important question. What does it truly mean to be a monster? Is it about physical appearance, or is it about actions and choices? The townspeople fear Tom because of his transformation, but is he the real monster, or are they, in their fear and ignorance, becoming monstrous themselves?
That's a great point. They're enjoying the peace that Tom bought them, but they're shunning him for the very act that ensured their safety.
Makes you think about the nature of fear and how it can blind us to the truth.
Exactly. And it brings us to another crucial question. Is the Wendigo truly gone? All right, we haven't really touched on that at all. Is there a chance it might return, even after Tom's sacrifice?
The source suggests that banishing the Wendigo wasn't like a permanent solution, but more of a temporary reprieve. Remember, the Wendigo is a manifestation of the forest's rage and hunger, fueled by this imbalance between humanity and nature. As long as that imbalance persists, the threat remains.
So even though Tom banished this particular Wendigo, the conditions that created it are still there, which means another one could emerge at any time. It's like plugging a hole in a sinking ship. You might buy yourself some time, but you haven't solved the underlying problem.
Perfect analogy. Tom's sacrifice bought the town time, but it didn't address the root cause. And the townspeople seem oblivious to this looming danger, while Tom, their only protector, is now an outcast bearing the weight of a monstrous transformation. It's a recipe for disaster.
What a horrifying thought. The very people he saved might be the reason for their own doom. What happens next? Does anyone come to understand the truth of the situation?
That's something we'll explore when we return for the final part of this chilling tale. But I think this story is already raising some important questions for us to consider. What are our responsibilities to those who protect us? How do we confront the darkness within ourselves and in our communities? And how can we ensure that the sacrifices made for our safety are not made in vain?
Those are some pretty heavy questions. I'm definitely thinking about those as we head into the final act of this story. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to the Walking Dread podcast, folks. We're wrapping up our tale of Tom the Hunter who sacrificed everything to protect his town from the Wendigo.
We left off with Tom as an outcast, you know, feared and shunned by the very people he saved. He's this solitary guardian, now a protector against the darkness, but at a great personal cost.
Yeah, it's a tragic image, a hero forced into the shadows carrying the weight of his sacrifice alone. Makes you wonder what it all means, what the lasting impact of Tom's story is.
That's what's so thought-provoking about this story. It's not just a simple monster tale. The source uses Tom's transformation to explore this complex relationship between humanity and the monstrous. Tom becomes both the protector and the thing being protected against.
It's almost like a reflection of the Wendigo itself, this creature born from human greed and consumption. Tom embodies that duality, the struggle between our better nature and the darkness that can consume us.
Exactly. It's a reminder that heroism often comes at a price, and those sacrifices can have unintended consequences. It makes us question what we consider monstrous and what we're willing to accept in the name of safety and security.
And the townspeople living in blissful ignorance, enjoying the peace that Tom bought them, while simultaneously rejecting him for the very act that ensured their safety. It really highlights the complexities of human nature, how fear and denial can blind us to the truth.
Their reaction to Tom is a reminder that sometimes the real monsters aren't the ones lurking in the shadows, but the darkness that exists within ourselves, the darkness we refuse to acknowledge.
It's like their fear of the unknown, of anything different or unsettling, prevents them from seeing the real threat. They're so focused on Tom's outward transformation that they fail to recognize the inner strength and sacrifice that defines his true character.
And in a way, their ignorance perpetuates the cycle of darkness. They fail to see that true peace and security require understanding, acceptance, and a willingness to confront the difficult truths that lie beneath the surface.
So in the end, is this a story about Tom's transformation into a monster, or the town's inability to see beyond their fear?
That's a powerful question, and I think the story leaves it open for interpretation. It challenges us to consider the different perspectives, the complexities of good and evil, and the choices we make when faced with the unknown.
It definitely leaves a lasting impression. It reminds us that the world isn't black and white, good versus evil. Even in the darkest of tales, there are shades of gray moments of both heroism and monstrosity, and ultimately a reflection of our own humanity.
And maybe that's the most terrifying aspect of all, the realization that the monsters we fear might be closer than we think, lurking not in the shadows of the forest, but in the shadows of our own hearts.
Folks, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Walking Dread podcast. If you liked what you heard, please rate and follow for more terrifying tales and thought-provoking discussions. Until next time, stay spooky.